What's up, you guys? I want to clear the air here on a question that I've seen asked a bunch of times on forums as well as in the comment section of a lot of other people's YouTube videos. And just to make sure you guys understand, I'm not trying to say other people's suggestions are wrong. What I'm trying to say is we need some good facts out there and some good suggestions overall. So, without any further kind of waste of time, what computer should you get as a programmer? If you're getting into the industry, you are probably asking that question, and I'm going to tell you right now, it depends on what you're trying to do. As a beginner, if you have just the goal of going into computer science and you're about to start a software development, like computer science program at a college, you can get any computer and it's going to be perfectly fine. If you are a huge Mac fan and you have the money to spend on a Mac, or you really want to buy one and you are fine with getting something used, go for it. I am not personally a Mac fan. I never jumped into getting one until I had to. And the only reason I got one, which, one second, I have a little Air here. I got one because I needed to build software for a Mac. I know there's cloud services out there which allow you to build in the cloud, but I needed it with me to go to basically client sites and show them their applications, and also I wanted to have something in hand just to experience it with. Nevertheless, if you love Macs, go with it. Find a used one if you have to. That's fine. Now, if you are not a huge Mac fan and you don't care about getting an Apple computer, then you can get any real Windows computer, anything that has basically the minimum specs, and it should be fine. You can go with a Linux system. You can go buy an old crappy laptop, and you will be able to do your work. To be quite honest, a lot of computer science programs actually have you submit a lot of your work or ask you to do your work on their servers. And I know when I was in college, when I was doing my undergraduate, they had a couple of Solaris servers, which were running Unix, that we would connect to, and we'd write our source code through an SSH session using NEdit or Nano, and we would actually write our code on those servers using our computer. So I could use the crappiest little Celeron Atom computer, and it would have been perfectly fine as long as I had a decent internet connection. I also could have done most of my basic programming in my little crappy computer too. But nevertheless, all of us have different utility purposes for what we're trying to do. I'm going to show you guys some computers I recommend if you're jumping into computer science and you're not going the Mac route, and where you could find them, okay? I'm first going to start off with your low-end systems. So you guys can check it out here. Let's see. I'm going to start off with some brand new low-end systems. And the first place I'm going to go is I'm going to go to Ben's Bargains, which is a discount site that kind of posts deals that are going on like Slick Deals does. And I'm going to go to the categories. I'm going to go to computers. I'm going to look up laptops and desktops. I've never bought a ready-to-go desktop computer. I've always built them. I buy the components myself. I put the computer together myself. I grew up doing that. I thank my older brother for kind of making me do that. Mark, if you're listening, thanks, man. But let's look at laptops first, and then I'll show you guys some desktops. So right away, here's a $350 laptop. It's got an i3 on it. Probably not an amazingly fast i3. It's at least a dual core. It's got 4 gigs of RAM on it. Not a big deal. 128 gig SSD. That's not horrible. Let's see. Let's see what the other actual components are. So what I'm really looking for here is if this thing has a video card. For that price, I don't expect it to have one, but at the same time, you find some cheap magic out there where it's actually a decent computer. So let's take a look really quickly and see what the deal is. So first of all, this is a 15.6-inch laptop, so it's a normal full-size laptop. It's not a 17, doesn't have a huge screen, which I don't like the 17-inch. I prefer a 15 or a 14. They're a little bit more portable and fit into backpacks and kind of like office suitcases or rolling travel bags pretty nicely. So that's what I prefer. Also, they don't eat up as much battery as a 17-inch. If you're playing games and you want it to be your main system, then this may be 17 inches may be good. I don't see any oh, here we go. So this looks like it's an integrated GPU. Oh, it's going to have horrible graphics rendering capabilities. Not a big deal. You're buying a $350 laptop. Most Macs don't have a dedicated video card, like a discrete one, where it's a Radeon or an NVIDIA. Most of them have an integrated chip on them, which has a graphics rendering chip in the processor, and that's how it's rendering. Nevertheless, $350, brand new laptop, that would work. Let's take a look at some of these other options, though. I think going to $600 brings you up into like the low mid tier range. And this one's obviously like a low mid tier gaming laptop. It's got a 1050 Ti on it, which is pretty nice. And let's see what else it has. It's running an i5. I don't know the benchmark on this specific i5, but just the fact that it has a 1050 Ti, you'll be able to run most games. You won't be able to run them on the highest ultra settings or anything like that, so you should be conscious of that. But this should be able to run most game engines. So if you're going to be trying to do game development and you want to do Unity work or you want to work in Unreal, this will at least get you there. So that's an option if you guys are going that route. Again, this is like the low mid-range, I'd say. If you're going to computer science and you don't know for a fact you're going to be doing game development, then I would go for something cheaper to start. Use that for your computer science work up until it doesn't work. So if you're going into a computer science program and 2-3 years in you realize you need a better computer, then consider getting something higher end or more powerful. The other backup option is build a desktop at that time, and you can go that way. But let's look at other low-end computers. Let's see. Here's a little crappy... Oh, okay, these are usually like refurbished Dell business computers. I don't recommend them unless you have to. Let's see what else there is. An old refurbished MacBook Air. Okay, here's an Asus VivoBook. I don't know which one that is. It's got an AMD quad core, and it's got an actual graphics card on it, I think. I don't know the AMD cards that well, so I'm always confused on if these are an integrated or if this is actually a graphics card that's been installed, like a little mobile one. But for $259, again, this will run it perfectly fine. You've got Windows 10, you've got a little SSD on it, and if you want to get maybe more storage space, you could upgrade this if they offer an upgraded version for a little bit. If the upgrade of hard drive space is more than $100, I say don't go with it. See if that laptop can be easily adjusted. Usually if you flip over the laptop, it's going to have a little compartment with screws on it. Those screws may be hidden under stickers or under little like rubber pieces. You can remove those, unscrew it, and then right underneath is a hard drive that's accessible. You can pull it out, swap in a new one, and that'll get you more space, and you'll probably be able to get a higher end one for pretty cheap. Just remember, you will have to reinstall your OS if you do that, so be careful. You could also clone the OS onto the new drive, but that's not always going to work well, especially on laptops where sometimes the OS is looking for particular components, and it may also tie in a hard drive. I don't know if it does that. So that may be a little over your guys' head. But let's look at what other options are. For $250, that's not horrible. Here's a $269 laptop with a Ryzen chip. I think this has an integrated graphics on it, which those, I think, at the time when they were released actually weren't that bad. But $269, you guys should be able to do that just by not going to Starbucks more than once a week. So do that, and you guys should be able to pay this off pretty quickly, especially if there's a payment plan. Ooh, $80 dual-core Chromebook. If you want to play around with a Linux-based system, I believe the Chromebooks are running on Chrome, which runs on a Linux system. That's a refurbished laptop, but $80. Is this like a heavy-duty one, which can be dropped and stuff? No, it just looks like a brick. Never mind. Looks like a tiny little netbook. It's 11.6 inches. And it looks like all of its hard drive space is 16 gigs. Maybe it's expandable and has a micro SD slot on it. This would be really funny to carry around. For $80, it's going to run like crap. But for doing basic computer science programming, unless you're getting into like heavy computing and you need processing power for it, shoot, even this would work, okay? Most of the stuff you're going to do on like data structures and algorithms, you don't need anything crazy. You can do it with any system. Even an old single core processor is going to run fine. And I think that's kind of the low end that you're going to be finding. Now, let's take a look at those mid-range laptops, okay? So the mid-range laptops, can I set a price range in here? Let's go with 500, and I'm probably going to go to, I would love to go in between 1,000 to 2,000, so I'm just going to set 2,000. I think mid-range should extend up to about $1,200. After that, you're really getting into the high-end range computers, in my opinion, unless you're going to gaming laptops. On the gaming side, I'd say mid-range, low-end starts around 600, high-end ends around 800. At which point you break into the awesome high-end computers over $2,000, which some of them will have 2 full-size graphics cards in them, running an SLI in a laptop. And it's like a huge brick that you have to carry around with you. So it's not really a laptop at that point. It's just a giant desktop in a mobile format. But let's take a look at these. So here's that original laptop I showed you guys for $599. It's got a 1050 Ti in it. That's not bad for a decent system. It's running an i5. I'll tell you, for about $800, I think you could find a pretty high-end i7 with a 1050 or a 1060 on it. So let's keep scrolling down here. I'm going to avoid the Macs again. The ZenBooks, I believe, have integrated graphics, but they're a very sleek model. Usually I think these ones can fold all the way around, kind of like this Acer you see right below it. So, oh man, I should have zoomed in a while ago. So here's that ZenBook. Usually they're pretty sleek. They're a pretty small laptop, very lightweight. And I believe, oh, this one does not look like it can fold over, but it's very, very slim. It kind of reminds me of that MacBook I just showed you guys, the Air I have. Very small, portable. This one's got 16 gigs of RAM and a 512 NVMe SSD, which is really fast. So that's pretty cool. I bet you it has, yeah, it's just integrated graphics. It's one of the Intel integrated chips. So you're going to have a limitation on graphics capabilities there. If you're going to be doing game stuff, not the laptop you want to choose. Do not choose something with integrated graphics like this or a Surface laptop or any of the ones that fold over. They never have a dedicated graphics card, or very rarely. And the graphics card they do have on them is probably going to be pretty bad. If you're just going into computer science and you have the money and you want the really slim form factor, cool looking thing, then okay, go for it if you want. I couldn't afford that when I was younger, but that's because we just couldn't afford it. I got hand-me-downs, and then when I was able to afford a computer, I did buy a decently costing laptop. It cost me actually $1,000. It was a Lenovo Y510P, and I still have that thing. That's actually still my main computer. It's about 6 years old now. My desktop is my primary rig that I do work on, so I don't really care too much about my laptop being the latest and greatest, because my desktop is the latest and greatest. So let's keep going on here. $500 for this more. This is another really sleek, slim factor, form factor one. Let's see, $800. Well, what does this one come with really quickly? An i5. How much space? Let's see. 8 gigs of RAM, 256 SSD. So this one, the only reason I think this could be cool is because it folds all the way over, so you get like that cool tablet form factor. And if you're going to be developing, say you have a desktop rig at home, and you want to see what it feels like to run on a tablet type mode without actually building for mobile devices like Android or iPads, or iOS I mean, then this could at least let you test it in a Windows tablet format. I'd say for that price, just buy a tablet. Go buy an old used tablet if you want to test that, instead of buying this. This is, again, like a nice slim form factor. If you really care about that, go for it. I don't think that's worth it, though. I'd rather get more bang for the price if I could. So I usually look for something with a graphics card. Here is like a higher-end, modern version of the laptop I told you guys about that I bought for about $1,000 about 5-6 years ago. This thing's got a 1660 Ti, an i7 that's probably going to be an i7700 or a 9700 or 87, whatever the current gen is. Here it is. I'm blind. So a 9750H, that's probably going to be a slightly throttled CPU, and it's probably throttled to make sure it doesn't overheat for the laptop form factor. But that's a high-end processor. It's a great video card for a laptop. You're going to be able to play most games at decently high settings. Not high, I'd say low to mid-range. And you're going to have to keep the laptop plugged in while doing that, but that's a pretty powerful laptop. You've got 16 gigs of RAM. That should be sufficient. Some people are going to say you want 32. But again, if you're going to computer science, this is like the overkill and only necessary if you know you're going to go into video games. Even if you're going to go into like AI and robotics, you really don't need this for machine learning or computer vision. A lot of that stuff is offloaded onto a web service, especially if you're using like TensorFlow or anything like that. And then the Python libraries really don't require this either. I'm not even sure if they're set up, the learning ones you're going to use in your computer science program. I don't even think they're ready to offload the processing to a GPU. So that's something to consider too. During your computer science program, this is overkill. You're just going to be that cool kid with a really cool beastly laptop. It's unnecessary. So let's take a look here at what else is available. Let's see. Another Ryzen. It's got a GTX 1650, $750. I'd have to take a look what that processor is. Here's a Dell G5. Same processor as the Lenovo we just showed you guys. It's got a 2060 on it. So that's probably a newer generation. It's probably the current year generation of that 1660 there. It's not a TI version. So a TI version is kind of like their overclocked high-end version of the video card. There's usually like a 1660 and then a TI version of that. And that TI version, so even though this is one generation old, because it's a TI, it may actually perform as well as this 2060 here. So that's something to consider. Now let's take another look. So we're starting to get to that 1,000 plus range. So yeah, I think if you guys have the money, this is the highest end you guys should consider going. I would not move up past like $1,200 if you're just doing it for computer science. When you start getting above that, you're looking at professional high-end computers that could be used for professional development or professional, if you're doing video editing or really large animations and graphics and rendering. That's when it becomes useful. I do not recommend that for somebody in college or somebody just learning how to program. For you guys, I really do recommend actually sticking under about $1,200, and ideally, if you could stick with a low-end computer, that's going to save you money so you can learn about programming, and then you can use the money you save later on when you know what you want to go into. All right, now on the desktop side, so I just went to the really high end. I'm trying to filter that really quickly for laptops just to see what's on here. I don't see anything over 2K. So anyways, let's go over to the desktops. So if you're okay going with a desktop computer, meaning you're not going to have a nice portable laptop while you're in class, then let's take a look at what's available here. So let's go under 2,000. And actually, let's go with a low range here. So I'll tell you right now, a desktop computer for the same price you're going to pay for a low-end laptop, like under, let's say between like $200 to $600, you can probably get the same components but a little bit higher end performance on the desktop than the laptop. So you can probably get the same performance as a laptop that costs like $400 to $1,000 for $200 to $600 for a desktop. Now those numbers may be a little bit rough, but that's what I do believe. I usually try to avoid any of these all-in-one systems. So if you take a look at this computer here, this is an all-in-one computer. You don't see a desktop tower, meaning that everything's probably installed on the back side of this monitor, meaning it probably does not have a dedicated video card. It has some integrated chip on it, and that may not be horrible for you. It's got the Intel HD graphics. That's an integrated chip, and that's going to have limited rendering and graphic capabilities. It will be a bottleneck at some point. It also only has 8 gigs of RAM. I think for $650, that's crazy. That's really, really high for a full desktop. But it does come with the computer, a touchscreen monitor, and That's not crazy. I mean, if you're going to end up buying a desktop and getting just a tower, you're going to have to get a monitor. You can get a monitor for around $100 usually, like a really low-end cheap one. And I could probably show you that right now. So let's take a look. Computer, so let's see, monitors. Let's see what the cheapest ones are here. $220 for a 27-inch. That's currently what I use. I have 27 inches at 2560 by 1440 resolution. Very low latency on them, fast refresh, etc. You don't have to pay that much. Mine were a bit more because they're the high-end Dells, but the high-end Asus monitors. But I would recommend you go with something cheaper. Here's a 24-inch ultra thin for $130 with a $20 gift card from Newegg. Usually you could find something even cheaper than that, maybe $100 sometimes. I don't see them off the top of my head right here. Whoo, that's a beast monitor, $1,000, 49-inch, 5120 by 1440. That's really, really wide. That's kind of cool if you're playing like a racing game. But anyways, let's get back to what I'm trying to find. Let's put a price cap on this to 200 and then 50. Let's see what comes up. 130, $98. Okay, that's a portable monitor. If you want to have an extra monitor for, let's say, if you want to take your desktop around with you, a tiny little one that's the size of a laptop, or if you want a second laptop monitor, you can carry this with you and plug it in. Usually it's a USB plug-in, and their response rates are pretty bad, but it's an extra monitor if you're working. Here's another $130 one. It's a Dell. $110. There you go, 24-inch, all right? So you can definitely get monitors for that price. I think Fry's, sometimes you'll find deals for like 80 to 120 bucks pretty regularly. So let's look at what other desktops there are. Here's a desktop computer for $700. This is a i7 8700. It's not a K version, but it's still a desktop processor, so it's not the mobile throttle. It doesn't have the mobile throttle. Because it doesn't have the K after the number for the i7 or for the Intel series, it means that it's not an unlocked CPU, so you can't overclock it, but you don't always need to overclock anyways. I actually don't usually overclock unless I absolutely am yearning for doing some overclocking for fun benchmarking. That's pretty high end, okay? That's a high end CPU. Decent amount of RAM, a good amount of SSD space, plus it's probably a combo drive with 2 terabytes of hard drive space. So it's non-SSD, but it's a combo drive, so you'll run your operating system on the SSD, everything will boot fast, things will load quickly, and then you'll have 2 terabytes of extra memory. You've got a 1070, which is probably equivalent to the 1660, maybe the 1650, if that's actually the benchmarks. You can look that up, and it's 8 gigs of VRAM on that thing, so that's a high-end video card. I think the 1660 had 6 gigs, so that's going to be able to run most games. You can do VR on it. That's pretty darn nice for a fully ready-to-go system. It doesn't look like there's a ton of variety on here, so let me just pull up before I end the video. Let's see what Fry's has. If you guys don't know what Fry's is an electronics shop. I have always been kind of exposed to them on the West Coast. On the East Coast, I don't think there are any, at least not here in Boston. I think there are Micro Centers out here, so Micro Center will have deals too. And what other computer shops? And then you have all your normal online retailers like Newegg and stuff like that. But let's see what towers they have. So cool stuff. PC computers. Wait a minute. Did I only look up high-end computers for you guys? Let me show you guys the lower-end desktops. Just to show you what you could get if you do not want to pay a ton and you're willing to get a desktop, okay? So desktop computers. Let's see. Oh, that's why Ben's Bargain only had that. So let's take a look at computers. Okay, Fry's website's annoying. Let's go to Newegg and see what they have. So let's see, computer systems. Desktop computers. And I'm going to focus on the lower end computers, all right? Basically stuff under $800. That could be mid-low end, really. And let's see, you've got one here for $682. Here's one for $741. $400. That's a pretty good number there. And most of these are all going to be Windows. So just giving you a heads up, and they'll have Windows ready to go with them. So here's the one for $682. They offer a monthly payment plan, which isn't bad. Let's see, it comes with a 1050 Ti. I think we saw a laptop that had a 1050 Ti mobile version on it for around $700 as well. Remember, desktops, you have the full form factor graphics card in it, and then you also have usually a little bit of a better processor. So I'm not sure how the Ryzen 5 first gen is, but you also are getting 8 gigs of RAM. You're getting a large tower, which means you can easily upgrade the system by popping off the side, adding more RAM, changing out the video card, etc. And you're getting a 500 gig SSD. That's pretty cool. It's not horrible for $680. I think if you built something similarly for yourself on your own, you could possibly build this for a little bit cheaper. But this is probably going to come nicely wire managed. And if you're not used to building your own computer and getting your own processor and putting thermal paste and seating a processor in there, putting thermal paste in the actual heatsink on top, then you may just want to do this and buy a ready-to-go computer. Again, towers are nice. They're advantageous because they're easy to replace parts. If something goes bad, you can easily replace it. Laptops do not always have that flexibility. That's one of the bad parts about it. Let's take a look at this other tower. This is a pretty cool looking one. Definitely has kind of a gamer sense, a little bit more of a hardcore feeling to it. Let's see, you have options here. So for $750, you've got an i5, and you're getting a 1060 on it. So the 1050 Ti on the last computer is probably comparable to this. 1060, probably maybe a little bit worse. I'm not too sure. 8 gigs of memory, no SSD, but you get a 1 terabyte hard drive. So that's the difference on this one. It's ready to go. Comes with Windows. Yep, a 1060 is definitely VR ready. It's going to kind of give you the low end of VR though, so it'll be sufficient, but it won't be amazing. You can always, again, with a full tower, replace the video card, and you can also add more memory pretty easily, change out the hard drive to an SSD. You get that flexibility. But for that price, I think you could find much better. The other one was cheaper, $682, and I think it was a better computer overall, although I didn't compare the processors. Last computer I'm going to look at here, all right, you guys? $400. If you're a computer science student, you can get a cheap system like this, even cheaper if you want to, and you'll be fine. All right. Again, you're not going to expect to do a lot of game development on this rig, although this does come with an AMD R7. So let's look at what the benchmark is really quickly for this. Let's see. Tom's Hardware, is that what it used to be called? Tom's Hardware, all right. So Radeon R7. Woo! That does not look like the best video card. Oh, man. So let's compare this to like a 9. Let's compare this actually to that 1060 we were just talking about. So this thing gets murdered. It's a pretty crappy card. Summary of what I'm interpreting right here, okay? For a computer science student, you don't need a really good graphics card unless you're going to go and do game development, or you're going to be doing something requiring a lot of graphics, offloading graphics processing to that, like parallel processing. If you're going to do GPU programming and you need to have an NVIDIA card with CUDA, then you may want to actually get a full tower and get something which you can add a graphics card into. This is not an example of a great computer to buy. You can usually find better systems than this. What I recommend, if you are going to buy a cheap tower and a brand new one, look for one with a good processor that also comes with a decent amount of RAM and maybe a good SSD. You can buy your own graphics card and add it on, on your own time and on your own dime. That way you get a computer that's up and running, and then when you're ready to buy that GPU, you can do it, all right? This one comes with one, so what you can do is you can just sell this one off. It may not make you a ton of money. You could, even without that, you don't need to make a ton of money off selling it. You can just go buy a new one, pop it in, you're good to go, all right? The last thing I'm going to show you guys, because it just came to my mind, if you really don't have the money to be buying a brand new computer and you just need something to work with, Goodwill Auctions does sell laptops. I have helped a few students out in the past with finding laptops on here, and they're usually wiped. You're going to have to install your own OS. If you are interested in doing Linux type, learning how to use Linux and such, this may be an option for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys what I would do and search for in here. So go to computers, go to laptops, and then look at refurbished, all right? Then submit your search, and you could find some really cheap laptops on here. Stuff where it's not going to be the best, it's not going to be the fastest, but if you're just doing regular computer science and software development, then you should be able to work on this perfectly fine. You can install Visual Studio usually, as long as you get something with a little bit of RAM on it, or at least enough room to upgrade RAM. And I'm looking at laptops right now. You can also find desktops. If the computer's running, at least you have something that runs and can help you out. Let's see. This is a Lenovo for 72 bucks. This actually looks like my laptop. No, this is the newer version of my laptop, actually. I'm very surprised to see it on here. I think this is not the Y510P. This is the Y710P. Is that what it is? It's even got a Windows key. Goodwill. If I can see this Windows key, I can possibly take it. Just warning you guys. So I think this is the actual Windows key on it. I'm just laughing. I'm not actually going to take it. I don't need it. But this is actually a pretty darn good, like, low, mid-end laptop. Usually goes for about $1,000. I think Costco is selling it for a bit. Okay, so it is a I think this is a Y50. And this one, I think, came with a... Okay, so it's a 4700 CPU. That's the high end of the 4 series. It's a few years old, but that's still a high-end computer. Again, this is the newer version of what I had. Now, this is saying it just has integrated graphics. I don't know if I believe that unless somebody removed it because it still was modular. For example, my laptop, the older version of this, actually has 2 video cards in it. I bought it for $1,000, which was awesome, and one of them is actually removable. Now, that still leaves one of them in it, so I wouldn't have a problem, but I'm surprised that this one doesn't show, or their description doesn't say it has the actual video card in it, so maybe this is the lower end version. In any case, it's a great CPU. For $100, that may be a good option for some of you guys out there if you guys can afford it. You guys can install Linux on it if you don't want to deal with Windows and having a license. Here's a Dell Latitude. These are the ones that are refurbished that you saw on Ben's Bargains. They're pretty crappy. They're usually from like an office space that they've been abused in, but they still work usually. I think these things are usually like bricks. This one's missing the little mouse button thing, although it does have a touchpad, so that works. I don't know if it worked though. So on Goodwill Auctions, you can review their notes. Make sure if you buy one off here that it has a charger so you don't have to go buy one. If you do get one without a charger, check Amazon. They usually have some knockoff chargers you can buy for like $20, and that could at least save you some money. It looks like they have some limited laptop stuff here. I don't want to look at parts and repair. Hey guys, unfortunately, my computer crashed towards the end of that video. In any case, I think I went around 20 minutes over what I expected that video to take because I went down the rabbit hole of showing you guys a ton of different options and then went on some tangents regarding high-end and low-end computers and what you guys should really do as a computer science student. In any case, I wanted to make sure you guys know, as a computer science student, somebody going in or learning development as a beginner, you don't need a high-end computer. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars. You can buy a simple computer for a few $100 and it has Windows on it. If it does, you can run Visual Studio, you can run Eclipse. If you're doing web dev, you can just use a Notepad editor, or you can download Atom or Brackets or VS Code. Likewise, if you want to buy a computer without Windows, you can buy something or put together a desktop for really cheap and install Linux if you want to learn it. Ubuntu is hugely popular now. It's very streamlined. Lastly, if you want a Mac, you can buy a Mac too. No one's going to hold that against you. So I definitely say if you're looking to start out, I try to focus for under $500. Let yourself learn what you really want to do first. And then if you want to spend larger money, sell that computer off or keep it as an extra and then get a better system. If you have a desktop, upgrade the parts if you want to, and then evolve. If you have the money already, buy whatever you want. You guys are going to do that anyways. In any case, that's going to go ahead and end this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please do subscribe and hit the bell so you guys get the reminders of when our new content comes out. We do appreciate that. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please do leave it in the comments below. And make sure you share it with all your friends. Have a good one, you guys.